He just said it. There he is right there at his trial out of his own mouth. He says, I am who? I am. I am Christ. And for that fact, do you understand what's happened there? Jesus is condemned to death, not based upon the statements and testimony of accusers, but upon his own admission, saying, I am who? God. I am the Son of God. And for that, if you read down, he's going to be turned over to the Romans, and the Romans are going to bring him to Pontius Pilate. And Pontius Pilate is going to know that Jesus is innocent, and he's going to wash his hands of the matter and send him out to be crucified because of what the pressure the Jews are putting on him. Now, I want you to come with me to John chapter 2. Jesus' trial was the culmination of 3 years, his 3-year earthly ministry of challenging the religious authorities in the nation of Israel. And the challenge started way back from his earliest days. I want to look first at John chapter 2. Let's look at verse 13 through verse 17. This is the passage that Bud read for the scripture reading. John chapter 2, verse 13. Notice, and the Jews' Passover was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem, and found in the temple those who sold oxen and sheep and doves and the changers of money sitting. And when he had made a scourge of the small cords and drove them all out of the temple, and the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the changers of money and overthrew the tables, he said unto them that sold doves, take these things hence, make not my Father's house an house of merchandise. Now, everybody knows this story growing up from Sunday school, right? Jesus walks into the temple, and there are all of the people that are seeking to profit off of the religion of the nation of Israel. And he's disgusted at it, and he tips over the money changers, he throws them all out of the temple, and he removes all that stuff from his midst there. Now I want to ask you a question. Where is he when he does that? He's in the temple. What is the temple? The temple is the center of Israel's religious life. The temple is where the priests, the Pharisees, and the Sadducees, and the priests, the leadership of the nation of Israel, was supposed to be leading the people in their worship and service to God. And Jesus goes in there, and he throws out all of these folks who are profiting from Israel's religion. And he gets rid of them. Now, look at what they say to him in verse 18. Then answered the Jews and said unto him, what sign showest thou unto us, seeing thou doest these what? Now, what are they essentially asking him for? Proof. On what authority do you come in here and do what? Throw these people out of here. What authority? What proof? What sign are you going to offer us to demonstrate that you have the authority to do this? Now, what do we already know about the nation of Israel? 1 Corinthians chapter 1, the Jews require a what? A sign. What do we know from other places in the book of John itself? That except ye see signs and wonders, ye will not what? Believe. But here they are asking for a sign based on what authority Jesus does what he just did here. Okay? Now, look at what he says. Verse 19. Jesus answered and said unto them, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will what? I will rise it up, he says. Look at their answer. Verse 20. Then said the Jews, 46 years was this temple in building, and wilt thou rear it up in 3 days? What's their answer? Their answer is, you got to be kidding me. It took us 46 years to build this temple, and you're going to rebuild it in 3 days. So they clearly understood him to be referring to what? His body or the physical temple that was standing there before them? The physical temple, the thing that he had just cleansed by throwing those guys out of there. And they asked him in verse 18, they said, on what authority? Give us a sign. What gives you the right to do this? And his answer to them is what? It's in verse 20. I'm sorry, verse 19. Then Jesus answered and said to them, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will what? Raise it up. Verse 20, then said the Jews, 46 years was the temple in building, and wilt thou rear it up in 3 days? Look at verse 21 through 22. But he spake of the temple of his what? What was he talking about? Understand what's going on. They said, give us a sign to show us you have the authority to do this. And he says, okay, I'll give you a sign. The sign that I'm going to give you is that this temple is going to be destroyed, and 3 days later what? Raised from the dead. And they say, well, how can that be? It took us 46 years to build this building. And he says, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what? This. His own what? His own body. So the sign that he is going to give them, that he had the authority to do this, is going to be when he does what? Rises from the dead. Now, look at the next verse. When therefore he was risen from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this unto them, and they believed the Scripture and the word which Jesus had said. Now, when do they know that, remember that, and recognize it to be so? While he's alive, or after he's dead? Now, that's a key point here. Come with me to John chapter 10. John chapter 10, verse 17. He says here, Jesus says, therefore doth my Father love me. Why? Because I lay down my life that I might what? Take it up again. Verse 18. No man taketh it what? From me. Does that match what we read in Mark 14? Did Jesus willingly turn himself over and out of his own mouth admit that he claimed to be the Son of God and that he was the Son of God? No one is going to take this from him. He is going to do what? He is going to willingly, of his own accord, lay it down. No one's going to take it from him. Verse 18. No man taketh it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to do what? Take it up, or take it again. This commandment have I received of my Father. So Jesus says, I'm going to die, I'm going to willingly lay down my life, and then I'm going to do what? I'm going to take it back. I'm going to raise again from the dead. Come with me to Matthew 16. You know, a lot of people are operate in their Bible study under a false assumption that everybody throughout all of time and history believed for salvation that Christ died, buried, and rose again. That is not the case. Because if you look at the book of Matthew, in chapter 3 and 4, Jesus goes out and preaches the gospel of the kingdom. In chapter 10, he commissions the 12 apostles to go out and preach the gospel of the kingdom. Now look at what he says here in Matthew chapter 16, verse 21. From that time forth. What does that mean? That means from that point in time, was he going to do something that he wasn't doing before? Read the rest of the sentence. From that time forth, what's the next word? Began Jesus to show unto his disciples. So at a certain point of time, Jesus starts to show unto his disciples what? That he must go into Jerusalem and suffer many things of the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed and be raised again when? The third day.